The haunted radio station, Jake Larson, had always been drawn to late-night radio. The mystery of unseen voices reaching out into the darkness, speaking to people he'd never meet. As a DJ for Midnight Melodies on 107.3 FM, he spent his nights playing old-school tracks, reading listener requests, and keeping insomniacs entertained. But when his co-worker Mason dared him to spend the night inside WXRK 103.6, an abandoned station on the outskirts of town, Jake couldn't resist. Everyone in town knew the legend of Victor Steele, the station's last DJ. Decades ago, Victor had been known for his eerie, hypnotic voice and his love for old records. Some say he was obsessed with his work, refusing to leave the station for days at a time. Then, one night in 1983, a fire broke out while Victor was on air. The station burned to the ground, but his voice kept broadcasting, even as the flames consumed him. When the firefighters arrived, the studio was a charred ruin. There was no sign of Victor's body, but the radio was still on. The static crackled, and through it, they heard a whisper. "Don't turn that dial. I'm still here." After that, WXRK 103.6 was shut down. No one dared to rebuild it, and the station faded into urban legend. But Jake had never believed in ghost stories. The setup. So, at exactly 11:45 p.m., armed with his portable transmitter, a flashlight, and a thermos of coffee, he stepped through the rusted doors of WXRK. The air smelled of mildew and burned plastic, and dust coated the old soundboards and turntables. The ONAIR sign above the door was cracked, frozen in time. Mason had bet him $100 that he wouldn't last till morning. Easy money. Jake set up his mic, ready to do a live segment for his followers. "Alright folks, this is DJ Jake, coming to you live from the legendary haunted station, WXRK 103.6. Let's see if old Victor wants to call in." He chuckled to himself, but the laughter died when the station powered on by itself. The lights flickered, the old radio console hummed to life. The broadcast begins. And then the speakers crackled. A voice, low, smooth, and impossibly clear, came through. "You're listening to WXRK 103.6, and you should have never come here." Jake's heart pounded. The soundboard knobs twisted on their own, dials spinning wildly. A vinyl record placed itself onto the turntable and began to play a song he'd never heard before. An old jazz tune, warped and scratchy. But beneath the music, there were whispers. Then came the next voice. A woman, sobbing. "Please, someone help me. I never made it home." Jake's stomach twisted. He had heard that voice before. Years ago, when he was just a kid, his mother used to listen to an old missing persons program. A woman named Clara Holloway had vanished in 1982 after calling into WXRK. She was last heard on air before she disappeared forever. And now, her voice was coming through the station, like it was happening in real time. The whispering increased, voices layering upon each other, overlapping, growing more desperate. He strained to listen. "He won't let us go." Jake's breath turned shaky. He reached for his phone to record, but the battery was dead. The vinyl stopped spinning. Then the voice returned. "You're on the air, Jake. Tell us, what's your final request?" The horror unfolds. A deep, icy dread spread through his chest. He tried to turn off the equipment, but the dials wouldn't budge. His hands shook as he yanked at the transmitter. But it wouldn't unplug. The speakers blasted a deafening burst of static, and through the white noise, he heard footsteps approaching. But the studio door was locked. The old clock on the wall ticked backward. 2:59 a.m. 2:58 a.m. The past was rewinding. The walls shimmered, and suddenly Jake wasn't in a rotting, abandoned building anymore. He was in 1983. The station was alive, pristine, untouched. The smell of burnt plastic was gone, replaced by the scent of old records and cigarette smoke. And sitting in the DJ's chair was Victor Steele. His suit was crisp, his tie loose, but his eyes were hollow, black as dead air. Victor smiled. "Welcome to the show, kid." Jake stumbled backward, pressing against the door. The whispers surrounded him, the air thick with voices begging for freedom. Victor leaned closer to the mic. "Let's make history." Jake's mouth opened, but his voice wasn't his own anymore. The static merged with his words, his soul being pulled into the broadcast, his body turning translucent, fading, becoming nothing but sound. The aftermath. The next morning, Jake was gone. His car was still parked outside the station, but there was no sign of him inside. The dust remained undisturbed, the equipment untouched, except for the old radio console. The ON AIR sign glowed red. Later that night, at exactly 3:06 a.m., if you tuned into WXRK 103.6, you'd hear a new voice. "Welcome back to the Midnight Hour. I'll be your DJ tonight and forever." Some say it sounds an awful lot like Jake, but those who listen too long, they start hearing their own names through the static, and when that happens, they never wake up again. And if you ever find yourself tuning into a station that shouldn't exist, don't listen too long, or you might never turn it off. But before you go, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell, so you never miss another chilling tale. Until next time, keep listening. But be careful what you tune into.